Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Red Dead Online and we're bringing you another outfit guide. This one being for a 1870s to 1880s, sort of just an American Indian War horse soldier. So basically the American Indian Wars it was not so much a cohesive war as it was sort of combat between various tribes of indigenous American Indians and the U.S. cavalry troops posted out west in the United States. So at this time, there were about 10,000 U.S. cavalry and infantry troops scattered across all these states, protecting settlers, investigating robberies, stagecoach stuff. They didn't just fight Indians, but it was called the American Indian Wars. They did a lot of stuff, but anyway, there was a lot of variation in these soldiers, but we're going to get into that a little bit more in each section. I think this outfit is pretty much the best way you can go in Red Dead Online to really encapsulate what it looks like to be one of these guys. So let's just dive on into it with weapons. So the first place we're going to stop is with our sidearm, and that's just going to be a Colt single action revolver. Now, obviously at this time there was a lot of variation. There would still be people using cap and ball percussion revolvers, like the Navy revolver in this game. The LeMat revolver was still being used. If you had officers that were a little bit more wealthy or just cared a lot more about their firearms, sometimes you'd even see things like the Schofield revolvers even being used. But the most common weapon that you would see horse soldiers during this period using is a Colt single action revolver. And now there were basically three variants of this one. The one that we're going to be looking at is going to be the Cavalry variant, which has the extended 7.5 inch barrel. The standard 5.5 inch barrel would have been the artillery variant, or what a lot of people will call your sharpshooter variant. It's basically just a much shorter one, but the cavalry ones liked the longer barrel because more often than not, they'd be firing from horseback, so you're going to want that increased accuracy. So that's why we have the longer barrel on this. And then for the design of it, we have no engravings, no carvings, a plain mahogany grip because it most accurately fits what you'd most commonly see on these from historically preserved pieces that I've been able to examine. And then for the coating, we went with all black and steel. Now you could do all brown steel, all black and steel, or all blued steel and be pretty dang authentic, but I think the black and steel just looks the best and has the best overall finish. There were examples from this period of officers using nickel-plated ones, but it was just far less common, so that's why I went with the all black and steel. So that's the sidearm, and our horse soldier is just going to be using one of these. Okay, so next we're going to be looking at their primary weapon. So basically it was very common for horse soldiers to be using repeaters because, as I said, they spent a lot of time on horseback, and so the common breech-loading rifle was less common with cavalry officers, or cavalry soldiers, at least if they could choose the weapon that they were using. And these ones were just very, very durable weapons. Very reliable, durable, all around a great weapon to have. So there's two variants that we're going to be looking at. And the first one is the 1860 Henry rifle. And so that's going to be the Litchfield repeater in the game. And now the style of this varied quite vastly, but this one I have here on screen is a decent representation of what you would see. A plain wood stock, no engravings, no carvings, a long either blued or blacked barrel. Obviously you're going to want your improved sights and rifling. And then you can either do brass or gold like I did for this one, just because it stands out a little bit more for the frame and the trigger, and even the sights to give you a little bit higher visibility when you're aiming. So that's the style I went with here. Like I said, there's a lot of variation. The brass is probably more common for the receiver color, but I just think the gold pops a little bit better. And the barrel was probably more often blacked, but I found some examples that were blued, and I just liked the way that looked better. So that's the first option for the repeater you can use to be accurate with this horse soldier. So the next option we're going to have is going to be the 1866 model Winchester. So this is the one that a lot of people are going to call the Yellow Boy. This was very, very common. While the Henry was a very respected repeater, when the Winchester came out, it was widely adopted by most people who had an option for what firearm they were going to use. It had a larger caliber, making it a little bit more accurate and a little bit more powerful, and it was just a much more reliable gun overall. Later, the Henry would adopt many of the Winchester's features and become very, very similar, but this one would be very, very common. So the Winchester model 1866, like this, with all black, with the blacked barrel, hammer, and trigger, and brass for the frame, lever, and sight, is going to be an excellent choice. This is my choice. I wanted to show the Henry because I know a lot of people prefer the Litchfield, and a lot of people historically prefer the Henry, but I prefer the Winchester. So that's why I went with the Winchester model 1866 for my horse soldier. So that's weapons. Let's move on to clothing. So here you can see our American Indian War horse soldier. So like I've said before in some of these videos, there's a lot of variation at this time. And so this outfit isn't going to be perfect, ideal for exactly going for, exactly what you're looking for, whatever. But this is a super good representation of what you might see. And I kind of just based this outfit on a cavalry soldier that I found in the John Wayne movie Horse Soldiers that I was like, hey, I think I can actually recreate that exact outfit. And so that's kind of what I was going for here, and it turned out pretty dang close. There's one minor thing that I'll get to when I get to that clothing piece that if I could change it would be perfect. But other than that, this is pretty dang good. So let's just hop through it piece by piece. So I went with this variant of the military scout hat as the hat. I think it looks really good. It definitely fits kind of the rugged, used look that you would definitely see in areas where you had horse soldiers at this time. Now, this wasn't standard issue. Standard issue would be the Union cap for this game. So if you wanted to make this one be as uniform and historically accurate as possible, what their standard issue would be the Union cap in this game, the blue one. And that would be what they would get when they were given their uniforms. But in practice, most areas would actually trade these out for, at the time, actually black felt Stetson-style hats, but those were a little bit too warm. So most units, especially in the Southwest and areas where it was just ridiculously hot and sunny all the time, they would swap these out for white, off-white, tan canvas style wide brim hats, kind of like this one. That would it would help shade them from the sun, but wouldn't heat up as much as that black or dark blue hat does. So that's why I went with this one. An alternative to this hat that works relatively well is this one. Basically, any of these military slouch hats, the light one, this one here, this one here, this one here, this one here, and even this one here, all of these would work. And I found a lot of historical examples of hats that looked exactly like this being worn by horse soldiers at this time. I imagine the front's turned up from riding a horse. I'm not sure exactly, because from my perspective, I always thought that looked silly, because isn't the idea to keep the sun out of your eyes? But maybe it's for increased visibility. Who knows? In any case, either of these hats will work. I actually just prefer the slightly more wore-down look of the military scout hat. So that's the hat I went with. Let's move on. Now for this one, I went with the stereotypical, what you'd see in a Hollywood movie, the yellow neckerchief that you see most horse soldiers wearing. Interesting historical note, not actually a standard issue thing. Neckerchiefs in general weren't standard issue, and even the color yellow is probably not one that you would see a lot. That being said, much like the people who made those movies, I really like the contrast of the yellow on blue, so that's why I went with yellow. The most historically accurate color I could find for horse soldiers' neckerchiefs at this time would actually be the red one. And in fact, even in the John Wayne movie I was talking about, the horse soldiers, most of them are actually using red neckerchiefs, not yellow ones. But with that in mind, like I said, I just wanted to go for that awesome Hollywood-style contrast, because the yellow just looks so good on blue. So that's the one I went with. Unfortunately, I didn't find any coats that I liked, because the standard issue would have been what they called a blouse. It would have been just a button-up blue jacket that they would have wore over top of their shirt. So that would have been standard issue. All these horse soldiers would have had one. Wouldn't have wore it most often because it was just super hot and dusty, and you didn't want to have a whole extra layer on you most of the time. So they wouldn't actually wear that unless they had to in most cases. So I just went with the undershirt. And now there's a lot of options for the undershirt. I went with this variant of the Chafton shirt just because it has that bibbed button section in the middle. That was exactly what I was looking for. My only complaint here is I would rather just have a solid blue one, just a solid blue Chafton shirt. So that whole bib section being blue, the collar being blue, all of it, because that was something I was able to find a lot of historical examples of, especially officers wearing at this time, would be the bibbed blue shirt like this. With that being said, this one still works relatively well, and it does kind of fit the color scheme because that's kind of like an off-white yellow look, so it still looks pretty decent in my opinion. There's a few other options, so I'll show you some other shirts that would obviously work just as well, if not better than the Chafton shirt. So this blue work shirt works decently well, as it would actually most commonly be a flannel shirt that they would be wearing. It's really dirty, so I don't love it as much as the other ones, but this one would work decently well. Keep in mind, this is an item that you would have to pay with gold to buy, so not everybody wants to do that, but this one does work relatively well if you just want a solid blue shirt. And then another option that doesn't fit as well because they don't have the right color is the bib shirt. Now mind you, this, like I said, is if the Chafton shirt just had solid colors, it would be my obvious choice. But that being said, I was also able to find some historical examples of the shirts actually being black, like this one. So you could just use this bib shirt if you like the bibbed look. They don't have a dark blue, so this black or even this light blue, which in my opinion is just way too light. I'm not saying this isn't something you would see. I'm just saying it's something that personally I don't like the appearance of. So you could go with either of those, but like I said, I go with the Chafton shirt. And since we're not wearing a jacket, I'm going to use suspenders because I just like the contrast they give, and obviously they wore suspenders in this time period for comfort reasons and obviously holding your pants up. So the ones I went with are the cotton suspenders because they have the single line down the back instead of the cross suspenders. Both options are things that you would have seen in the period. This one's just more accurate because it's more comfortable, less likely to get snagged on things. The crossback suspenders were not as popular with military personnel at this time. So that's why I went with these suspenders, and I went with the yellow color to contrast over the blue. Next for gloves, we have the obvious choice in these light tan cavalry gloves. They just definitely look awesome with this outfit, and they're accurate appearance-wise. So, you know, there we go. That's the gloves. For buckles, I went with the Seasoned Traveler buckle because it's got the right color and shape for a U.S. cavalry belt buckle. Obviously, it doesn't say USC or U.S., but it's got the right shape and color, so it definitely gets the right picture across. Then for the gun belt, I kept it simple and standard issue with the agency gun belt because I wanted it to look as standard issue as possible. Not that a drop leg holster would be very accurate anyway at this time, but this one looks pretty good. And like I said, with that belt buckle, actually looks pretty close to what you'd see on a horse soldier at the time. Now for the pants, I went back and forth on a lot of options before I decided on these ones. And now there's a lot of contention about these uniforms from the time because there's people that don't understand how they work. So when you look at pictures of these outfits, generally speaking, you'll notice that the jacket that they're wearing is much darker blue than the pants that they're wearing. So people always think that this must have been part of the uniform. They just must have been issued pants that were a different color than their jacket. This is not accurate. Historically speaking, horse soldiers at this period, especially cavalry ones, did not wear their blouse very often. They usually had their shirt on just underneath and their pants. So their blouse was normally tucked away at home in their barracks. So it did not get faded in the sun as quickly as their pants. So their pants would be a more faded color. But when they were issued, they would still be that royal blue color that the blouse would be. So you got to go for that darkness that the standard issue blouse would be, and that's why I went with these ones. Plus, I kind of like the stitching look on there. It just kind of looks cool. The only thing I don't like is that they don't have the extra canvas seating for cavalry officers that you would generally see, something to protect the pants, make them a little bit more durable. But I think this is fine because they weren't issued with that anyway. That would be something that horse soldiers would have altered on their pants afterward. But yeah, that's a common misconception that I wanted to clear up. The pants and blouse that were issued to these soldiers were the same color when they were issued. It was just that the pants got wore all the time and the blouse didn't, so the pants would be faded. That's interestingly why much later into the 21st century, when we saw the army switch from their dress browns to their dress blues, they were issuing these lighter colored pants with the darker blouses. It was kind of like an homage to the old uniform. They knew that they were originally issued the old color, but they wanted to go back to that sort of style. I think the uniform looked terrible, but that's why they did it. The pants that were issued at this time were the same color as the blouse. So don't let anyone tell you anything different. Anyway, so that's pants. Let's move on. So for the boots, the most obvious choice is going to be these cavalry boots. And I'm going to go with this black variant just because that's the most common color for standard issue military footwear at this time. It's going to be black cavalry boots, and any black spurs are going to match that because the spurs are going to come down to the individual soldiers' tastes most often. So that's why I went with these ones, and I went with the black leather spurs on top just to match with it. And I'll show you which kind those are after I show you something else. But so this is something that would be very standard issue. There was another standard issue military footwear instead that was actually a type of shoe that they would wear half chaps with. So I'll show you that as an option instead if you don't want to use the cavalry boots. So if you don't like exactly how the boots look, then these military half chaps are an excellent addition. Now it's funny because in real life they would issue shorter shoes that would be wore around base, even for cavalry soldiers, and then they would wear these half chaps with them to protect their legs from all sorts of stuff, keep dust, insect, all that sort of stuff out, and protect. They wanted to cover you around the ankle region. So that's just generally why a lot of these would still be used. So this is also a very viable option. Interestingly, half chaps were usually only wore with shorter shoes or real short boots that maybe just went above ankle height. That's why you would use these, was to give you that almost knee height protection from moisture, dust, or insects or whatever you were trying to avoid. But in this game, for some reason, you can't use them with shoes. You can only use them with boots. So you can pop them right over the cavalry boots and change the look, and it keeps them still looking pretty dang good in my opinion. So you can either go with the cavalry boots or these military half chaps with any black boots. But either way, it's going to look pretty decent. So those are your footwear options. Like I said, for spurs, really, it's kind of up to you. It just matters what you like the look of. But I like going with the Western Rider spurs, these black variants. I think they look nice and simple, very utilitarian, and they don't look gaudy or flashy. So that's why I like these ones. But really, any black spurs are going to match these boots or the half chaps just fine. But yeah, like I said, in the end, that is my U.S. American Indian War cavalry horse soldier uniform. So Like I said, there's tons of variation. You can change the shirt a lot. If you want to be a little bit more accurate, you pop a red neckerchief on instead of the yellow neckerchief. The hat, you can go with a lot of different styles because that's mostly going to come down to the individual preference of whoever the commander for that fort is. And they're going to either, some of them were real brass tacks and it probably made these people wear their Union caps, and other ones probably didn't care at all and you could wear whatever hat you wanted as long as it wasn't something ridiculous. But with that in mind, like I said, the military scout hat or the military slouch hats are my favorite for this outfit. If you have any recommendations or requests or anything else that you would like to see me recreate in this game, definitely let me know down in the comment section. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you like this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.